IVM.
Hi, I'm Zarina Poonawala, your peak performance coach, life coach, emotional intelligence practitioner, and NLP practitioner. I'm also the founder of Abzo Expertise Uni, and my organization constantly aims at building leaders across continents. After having worked with so many dynamic business honchos, entrepreneurs, startups, CEOs, management gurus, parents, and student communities worldwide, I am convinced that every individual has unleashed potential, and all we really need to do is realize it. Watch the magic unfold, enhance quality of life, relationships, and professions. On my show, be ready for some riveting conversations with inspirational people, snippets, stories, and much more. So here I am on this exceptional journey to find empowerment and inspiration anywhere I can. Come join me on this breathtaking path of self-realization, potential maximization, positivity, and most of all, embrace your inner power. You are on your way to empowering yourselves. Welcome to the Empowering Series with Zarina Poonawala. On today's episode, I'm in conversation with a benevolent, young, passionate educator. And she is Akanksha Priyaraj, the founder of Ayukta, an NGO which aims to provide education specially to house help and drivers' children. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do, Akanksha. Hi, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Zarina. Thank you for having me here.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, Akanksha, you sound like a very young and passionate girl, like I mentioned. How did this happen, Akanksha? How did you land up creating Ayukta? What was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so Ayukta was actually, it's a funny story. It was created on the day when I had to give an acceptance to one of my college course. And I was very confused at that time that, is this the right time? So I got acceptance from Young India Fellowship, and that was the time when everything was going online. So I was wondering, is this the right time for me to get into this course, or should I wait for another year when things get back to normal?
Right.
And I think that was like the time when I was like, let me divert my mind. And it's as shallow that it may sound, but to divert my mind, I was like, I was teaching kids at that point of time, but I wanted to make it a little big, and I didn't have the driving force. So maybe this thing, when I was trying to divert my mind a little bit, I was like, you know what, I'm going to put this Instagram page out today and let me work for it. So it started in the morning. I went to my mom and dad's room and I'm like, suggest me a name. I want to come up with it, because they already knew I was doing the online classes since day one of lockdown. So since March, I was teaching, and this was about July. And they were all aware of it. So they thought that, okay, maybe this is kind of a publicity way of getting more volunteers. So they never thought it would become this huge. So they gave me a name. I asked a couple of my other volunteer friends that, hey, I'll put up your post and everything. And within like 24 hours, it was up live.
Wow.
So that was how fast that Ayukta really started.
But you landed up making an Instagram post. Why? What drove you?
Yeah. So when we started, I used to teach kids offline before lockdown. This was the time when I was staying in Mumbai. I got my first job, freshly graduated from college. So I started going to this construction site that was about an hour away from my house.
Right.
So I started going there, and then that was I think my way of socializing in Mumbai. I loved that part. When I moved back to Delhi as lockdown started, I mean, like every student, I came home during the holy time and then just never went back.
Okay.
So that was the time when I came here, and then all the scenario started worsening. So about, I think, the first week of lockdown, we were like, we would not let the kids their education affect. So whichever kids we used to teach, I started teaching them online.
Okay.
So then it started becoming, at that point of time, we also had a lot of people because everyone was very fresh. It was like the first month of lockdown. People had this drive that we are at home, so we are going to bring a change. So we had a lot of people to help. It was not just one person. There were a community of people who were doing it. But then we saw that the numbers slowly started declining because by like say May, and everyone was getting frustrated because it was about 2 months. And when it started, we all thought that by April, everything will become fine. And then by May, we were still very much into it, and the numbers were only increasing. So that was around the time when we realized that we need people. So Ayukta was basically started when we thought that this is the time when we need to have people, because the kids that we were teaching, they every day they would come and they'd be like, my friend wants to study, my brother wants to study, but we didn't have so many people who can actually teach them because the class were one-to-one, and with our full-time job there were only a limited number of people we could teach on an everyday basis. So that was about the time that was the need for why Ayukta was started, was to get more people who are actually driven and want to do. And maybe that was like mid lockdown. July was like the peak when everyone hit their utmost thing that we need to get out of it. So we thought that maybe someone would find this as the way of as the escape from their daily schedule.
But you also landed up vetting a lot of volunteers. So when you had that Instagram post, I believe there have been a couple of artists and actors who also promoted your post and they found your work very interesting. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And all thanks to Riya Kapoor for that. She's a Bollywood producer. So I think within a week of us having our page, that's when I believe it started with her liking one of our posts. And as a very Bollywood obsessed person, I was very happy and I shared it all with my, the screenshot of it with my friends. And then within a week of that, someone from her team got in touch with her. So at that point of time, they were doing something called as the Good Influencer Project. So it was a campaign that they were doing to promote small businesses. So it was focused more on small businesses, but they wanted to do one project with a social impact. So the team got in touch with me, and at first I thought maybe because it was not from her ID, it was from her team's ID. So I thought maybe it's someone just on Instagram trying to fool me, because all my friends know how obsessed I am with Bollywood. So I thought it was one of those times when everyone's just trying to probably make fun of me. So, but I thought that let's not draw a conclusion here. So I gave her my contact, this girl who contacted me. And then she called, and then, a couple of meetings happened, and there were to and fro of emails. And that's when I realized that, okay, this is probably something that has actually been happening. Because I even looked up at her page and I saw that, yes, this is very much what she's doing. So yeah, I think till the day that it went live on, I believe 2 or 3 days before Independence Day, so about 13th August or something. So yeah, when it went live, I did not know Anushka Sharma was a part of it till then. So this was something that they did not tell it to me. They told me that there's an A-list actress involved, but I did not know who was that person. And I didn't even know it was 13th of August that they're going to put it live. So I was very much aloof. There were a lot of facts that I was just not aware of, because I didn't want to put my heart into something, and then if it gets shelved, I would have felt really sad. So I just thought that let's go with the flow. If it happens, it happens. And then when it happened, it was probably the best thing that could happen with Ayukta, because within a night, we got about 150 entries from people. After that, we have to do our own process to get them thing. But there were 150 entries that came within that 24-hour gap.
And you used those 150 applications, you processed them, you vetted them, but you only selected about 70 volunteers. Am I right?
No, it's an ongoing thing. So we don't have, because this involves commitment. When people look up at our Instagram page, they don't realize what kind of commitment is necessary.
Yeah, when you start processing and vetting people for volunteering and that kind of work, what is it that you're looking for?
So we look for the commitment. If you have the commitment, then I think you are already 80% in there. Because it's an everyday thing. It's not a once a week, once a month. It's an everyday 30 minutes. So you need to have that commitment. Once they have the commitment, we have an orientation thing where we tell them about what we do, how we teach, what are the requirements and everything, just for them to have that kind of transparency. Once that is done, then we ask them to observe a class with an old volunteer. And if they have gone through all the process, and we know that, because this entire process in itself takes about a week and a half or 2. So once they're done with the entire process, we know that they really want to do it, because that's also our way to check that if they're really committed or passionate about it. So if they've gone through the entire process, most likely they will be very willing to teach. So after that, we assign them a child. And then they get onboarded to get added to all the groups and community that we have.
That's
So
very
yeah,
interesting.
that's the way that it happens. So from like about I think total from the day we started till now,
Mhm.
we have like 550 volunteers entries that came in, but only 170 of them are like active volunteers at present. So it involves like a lot of filtering and for someone to actually end up volunteering.
And the fact that, I've realized, and I've spoken to a lot of different founders from NGOs, I've seen this sort of trend or behavioral pattern, Akanksha, that volunteers may show a lot of commitment in the beginning, but eventually sometimes the attrition rate increases in that kind of work simply because maybe they're not looking at it as something they want to do full time, right?
Yes.
And you yourself don't promote this whole thing as a full time activity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's correct. So when I started it, I wanted to make it look like normal people who have a 9 to 5 job can
Hmm.
also donate their time and bring a change to the world because that's the majority of the population of the country. There are wonderful people out there who do it as a full time, but most of the people, even though they want to do it, they have a full time job, whether they're not able to take time out.
Hmm.
So our whole idea was that you can take your time out with your full-time job to do this. It's just a matter of half an hour. I'm sure most of us in this generation, we spend about 1 hour on Instagram. My average time on Instagram is 40 minutes, and I'm not proud about it, but that's what it is. So
40
we
minutes is too less. I'll tell you that. I mean, I know people who are literally spending 40 minutes off Instagram. So you're pretty good at that, I think.
Oh, then that's nice.
Yeah.
Off late, I've switched off all my screen timing because I've realized that it gives me. I'm like, why am I spending so much time on my phone? Because now, because of Ayukta, I have to spend a lot of time on my phone. But yes, I think that was the whole idea behind it. Like you said very rightly, people come into it when they're switching jobs or if like they have a light semester and they do not realize it, so they sign up because
Hmm.
we've all done that. As I think everyone in a way wants to do something good because that also makes them feel good.
True.
So that's one thing that people have. So when they sign up, they actually sign up with a good heart that they want to change. But then it's time management is something that's not probably everyone's cup of tea. Probably some people working 10 hours give them the strength of like, okay, I have made my day. Some people find 10 hours too stressful. So
Hmm.
it's just about how you take your time in. Are you a person who likes spending a lot of time or you're someone who likes to take things slow? Both of them being right in its own place. But we would rather want someone who probably would be okay spending half an hour because it's a long-term commitment.
Right.
So yeah.
But you're so bright and you're also so mature in the way you communicate your thoughts. I mean, how did that first instance take place where you decided that this person, this domestic help or this driver's son or daughter need help? And how did a young person, and I'm stressing on the word young not because age matters to me, I don't
Yeah.
think age is a big factor. You can achieve tons of things early or late in life as long as you're happy and you've achieved, but just the fact that to be able to think that deeply, to be able to be so altruistic or so compassionate at heart, it's difficult, because I think teenagers and growing youngsters, they would rather be spending time partying or chilling or doing things that normal people do. You have shown so much compassion towards people who probably have lesser, lower strata of society. How did you land up that first moment, that eureka moment for you?
I think there was no eureka moment as such. It was about the way I was brought up in a
Mm-hmm.
way that my parents were in a transferable job. So I moved about 8 schools growing up.
Uh-huh.
I was always that new girl in the school. For me, my education was one thing that actually helped me make a place for myself. Whenever I go into a new school, education or public speaking, I used to love public speaking back in school. There were two things that used to help me stand out in the crowd and would gather like people around me. I know as child, maybe if like used to study a lot, people used to call you geek. That probably did happen at some stage in my life as well. And then I would not want, like, I'll run away from books and I'll be like, no, I don't want to study because I don't want to be the nerd of the class.
Hmm.
But education in its way helped was a very important part of my life. And that's something that I knew since my beginning, since like grade one, grade two, that this is what's going to help me get a job. My parents were very particular about that. They told me that whichever field you choose, study hard and be the top on the field. It's also an Indian parent thing to do when they want the best for their kids, but that helped me in a way because I don't think so I would have studied if it was not for their motivation. And that was when I realized that I used to think as a child, I mean, of course, now my views on it has changed a lot. But as a kid, I used to think that if everyone's educated, if
Mhm.
everyone knows everything about it, then they all can get job and they all will be like, there wouldn't be no one who'll be poor. But of course, like as I grew up, I understand that for that, you also need to have that kind of jobs available for people to take up that job. You can have so many, you only have a limited white collar jobs. If everyone's educated for a white collar job, then again there'll be an unemployment.
True.
um, but as a 10, 11-year-old, I did not know much. I was like, if everyone's educated, then everyone will be able to land up a job.
Hmm.
So I used to love teaching people since then. So people who worked at my house at that point of time. When I used to go visit my grandparents in during summer break, my nanu had an habit of like teaching people. So whoever would work at his house, he would always teach them. So it was kind of an ingrained thing. I never realized at any point of my life that this is something new. I thought that this is what everyone needs to do. It's a basic thing.
Right.
Because it was something I've seen right from the time I was like little. So I thought this is what the process is like.
So for you, it was default mode. Like
Yeah.
this is just how one should be. This is just
Yeah.
a regular
This
practice.
I felt like this was something that if you are getting education and you're getting, I mean, I have studied from a national college where the funding comes from the government. It means that people who are paying tax in this country are paying for my education in some way or the other. Even though the fees is subsidized, it's because they have paid for the education.
Hmm.
So I knew that there's a civic responsibility that I have, then I need to give it back. Not for anything, for probably the amount of fund that a country spends on an individual when you go to a government college is they're spending that much so that you can bring some change. So that was always like into my head. So I knew like the first day when all my luggage arrived in Mumbai and I had my house settled, I told my mom that this is the time when I want to search for an NGO. So yeah, I think that was it. That was something that was a part of my first job. That if I'm doing my first job, I'm also like spending my weekend doing something meaningful.
That is very meaningful and that's very thoughtful. So how does the process work in terms of educating someone? So if and let's say one wants to involve themselves in this or contribute in Ayukta, how does it work, Akanksha? You can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure. So, like mentioned, once they get a child assigned to them,
Mm-hmm.
that is once they go through step one of orientation, step two of observing a class, step three, once they get a child assigned, they move to the main group. There, one volunteer is assigned with one kid. So, we do a one-to-one WhatsApp video call simply
Mm-hmm.
because the place that the kids are in, they do not have that kind of good network where they're able to support Zoom call. Even if they have good network, like a decent network, they do not know how to use video conferencing tools like Google Meet or Zoom class.
Yes.
So we stick to WhatsApp video call because they have that in their phone already, so there's no way of like asking convincing them to download an app because they already have that app.
Mm-hmm.
uh, so once they have that WhatsApp video call or normal cell call, if the network's too bad, then we switch to normal calls. We take one-to-one classes. So what a person needs to do is they need to tell us which class they're comfortable teaching with, what are the subjects they're comfortable teaching with. There's some people who only want to teach like in English to small kids. So then according to their needs and preference, we assign them the child that falls under the bracket, and
Hmm.
as well as what time suits them. I think time is also one of the main
Of course.
factor, right? Because there's some people who have morning jobs, there's some people who have like probably afternoon to night jobs.
Mhm.
So we'll accordingly, with all their preference, assign them someone that is the best match to them.
And did this whole pandemic bit, like you mentioned, resources, getting onto a Zoom call or a Google Meet is obviously very difficult. And education has suddenly taken a turn throughout this year, I mean, last year. So, did the pandemic and these resources like WhatsApp may also be difficult for some children to have, if not all, some of them, I'm assuming. How did you manage to tackle that challenge?
I think the WhatsApp challenge, we there were times when we took the class on normal cell call, but of course, there were times when we have to send them material. They don't even have a book,
Exactly.
so we
Hmm.
have to send them picture. So what we'll do is we'll ask them that if they know anyone in their area, probably they don't have a smartphone, but their neighbor have. Remember beginning the first few lot of kids that we had. Oh, that whole chawl had one phone. So all of them used to study from that phone. So we would send all the information to that phone.
Right.
So yes, that was it involved because also I mean, after a point, they started complaining that the person whose phone it was actually, like all these kids are now playing Minecraft or PUBG on my phone. So they had complained, but then I think it worked out well. If in case it was not for their neighbors, we probably reached out to someone in the family. Or I think recently there was one phone that we provided to these 5 to 6 kids. So one of our volunteers sponsored those phones. So it depends. We try as much as possible to minimize it. I mean, of course, there's so much more that we can do in future. But as of now, we have minimized using these three ways.
Fascinating. But what has the pandemic really taught you, Akanksha? I mean, obviously you've been doing so much work, and naturally that's all. It's a self-learning process. But anything that you possibly took away from this entire year that passed by, and all the challenges you faced with Ayukta, and making sure that things are still functional and running smoothly. What do you feel? What did you learn?
I felt that hard work is, I mean, it sounds as cliche as like it sounds, but hard work is the key to every thing. When we started Ayukta, we didn't know our bit that it's going to become huge. We have a 170 team people, and there were times when, of course, you feel like giving up. You're like, is this worth it? Because teaching is one thing, managing something is all another thing.
True.
I love teaching. Managing, I'm not very sure about if I enjoy it.
Okay.
Because it involves you daily talking to people, solving their problem, and there are times when you don't have a good day, and yet you have to talk to someone with a certain tone. So yeah, I think I have learned a lot about managing in itself, about how I think when I started off, I was very, very raw at that point of time. I would say whatever would come to my mind. But I think I've become more empathetic about people's problems over the period. And there's still learning. There's still days when I get very frustrated. So, but now I know that this is the time when I need to keep the phone away so that I don't say something that probably would be mean or something to someone else. But yeah, I think I have learned a lot about just managing because of Ayukta. Teaching wise, I think it remains the same. Something I've been doing for like pretty long now. So there's been no change as such. Online was a different way, of course, like to get like people to study and all. In offline, when you used to take classes, if someone doesn't study, you can at least make them sit down and you're like, if you do this problem, we'll play after the class. Online, you can't have that. If like they just disconnect your call or they say that I'm not well today, you can't say anything. You know that they are faking it because
That's true. That's true. It's so easy to fake from home and not be part of your classes anymore. That's so true.
yeah, that's true. There were days like I knew that they wanted to sleep. Like there was this two kids that I was teaching. One of them was sleeping, and whenever I'd be like, "Why are you sleeping? This is your class time." He's like, "I'm not feeling well." And 5 minutes later, I'll see him put some WhatsApp story, and they do not realize it. It's so easy to like actually see this thing. So yeah, I think that is one of the challenges that probably is still something that we're facing where we do not know how to like get kids because there's no offline. You can't like ask someone, you sit down, you study, and then we'll all play coco or whatever after the. You
But to
have
be
to.
honest, Akanksha, I don't think that is something which is only valid for this part of teaching. I think education and the sector by itself is suffering where this is concerned because even the best of schools and the best of people living in the best of places will complain about Wi-Fi or something or the other, or make up some story and not be there and not be present. So you can give the kids a little break on that, I feel.
Yeah, I think not just education, even when you have your office calls,
Oh,
there are
yes.
a lot of times you don't want to listen, and then after a point, you just unmute this. I hope no one from my office hears this,
I
but
hope
there are
so
a lot
too.
of times you want to unmute yourself, and you're just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like there are times when I know I'm just nodding to something I haven't heard of, and I still have to figure out what they just said probably after the call, but you're just doing it. Especially my timing is such that my clients are based out of US, so I have my meetings late in the night. So there
Okay.
are times when I'm having my dinner and I'm just like at like after a few intervals, I'll just like unmute myself and I'm like, yeah, no, I understand this. So they probably might not be me. Okay, this is TMI for this particular podcast, but yeah, I hope if they have probably heard this through, then probably they like me. That's why they're hearing a 40-minute thing, so they'll be okay with me
They won't
saying all.
mind. Yeah, they won't
Yeah.
mind. So tell us about your work, Akanksha. I mean, you're doing a full-time job, like you mentioned. You have clients in the US. What is it that you exactly do, and how do you manage your time with Ayukta?
So I work with a procurement consulting firm. My client is an automobile client based out of United States. So I find ways to basically help them save money. So it's a strategic sourcing thing. I mean, in layman's word, I'm basically asking them if this is their revenue. I'm probably like asking them to spend less money in the same project and get the same kind of work. So that's the work in nutshell. How I manage it? So luckily, my office hours have been a work from home oriented even before the pandemic. There were, I think, most of the time I used to work from home because my entire team sits out in Ohio. So for them, if I'm in Delhi or in Mumbai or at home, it doesn't matter. It's always late in the night. So when it comes to managing, you have two aspects to the job that I do. The first aspect is you doing the job, as in like you have your documents and your Excel files or your PowerPoints to make, and the other is to have the calls. So the meetings that you have is generally scheduled in the later half. Like it starts off about 6, 7 o'clock and it goes to like 12, 1. Yeah, so that's the time. I think by then, probably Ayukta's workload becomes a lot less. So Ayukta's work, I kind of try to finish it by my office timing starts at 2 p.m. So I finish all my Ayukta work till 2 p.m. Now there's like a proper team, they're coordinators. So all the classes, even the classes are running till 9:30 p.m. There are respective people who are the point of contact for it. So I don't have to micromanage. Whatever things I have to manage, I try to manage that in the beginning. From 2 p.m. to about 5, 6 p.m. I try to finish my files. If there's something I have some Ayukta work that I've scheduled between here, I try to probably start my work a little early. Like today I have this thing at 4, so I probably started my work at like 1-ish so that I can let this 1 hour be okay with it. So I think they're all very nice people, extremely flexible. So there'll be no problem with respect to managing both. It's long hours, yes. But I think it's all worth it when you see the results out. So
I can imagine. But what about the fact that, there are certain myths that come with doing an NGO job? Like, you meet a lot of people around who will say, I want to do something for society. I want to contribute. I want to create awareness, or I want to work for a cause. But when it actually comes down to working for a cause and dedicating yourself to a cause, people find it very hard to be consistent.
Yeah.
Do you think there are certain myths related to working with an NGO or just being part of a cause? Do you think those myths actually work as, barriers, and lesser people then volunteer or continue to volunteer?
Yeah, I mean, there is a myth. The biggest myth that I find in the volunteering thing is people think that you need to donate money always.
Yeah.
That's always right. That do you have the money to donate? But what I have learned in my volunteering experience so far, that money is one bit. Donating money, obviously need money and your sponsors. But what you need more is donating time. There are a lot of people in this country who have a lot of money and who are kind enough to donate all that money. But there needs to be a proper channel of you like having that money reach to the people who are actually needy. There's someone who needs to do the groundwork. So I've always believed that donating your time is far more painful than donating money. It's also a far more committed job. Not here saying that donating money is not required. That's extremely required. You need your funds. But also donating time should be at par with donating money. So I think that was one of the myths that I have seen in the volunteering industry, where people always think that, okay, if you're volunteering, it means you're donating. Second thing that I find people have a myth is that the pay is not well, right? Like a lot of people say that you don't earn money if you're here. I
Yes,
cannot comment.
absolutely. This one.
Yeah, I cannot comment on that more because I'm getting my money from my full-time job right now. So this is not my source of income. Ayukta is a zero fund, so there's no money transferred in and out. So no cash flow that happens with Ayukta. It's all free. So I get my money from the corporate job that I'm doing, which I think is paying me decent. So yeah, I think at this point I would not be able to comment on that factor simply because I've not done NGO or volunteering as a full-time thing. It's something that I'm doing on the sides. So I have my income, and I think because I'm doing it on my sides, I also do not have to stress a lot about money. If you have a steady source of income, you are also able to give your heart in it. That's why a lot of my friends, when they tell me that, will you make this full time? I was like, maybe I will not, because if I'll make it full time, the kind of person that I am, I would want to like then be best. I'd then have to worry about that. Am I making enough money to run my house?
Right. Yeah.
At this age, probably I do not require money to run my house because I'm still living with my parents. But I'm sure 5, 6 years down the line, I would when I start my own family and I'll move out. So yeah, that's why I think probably for me, what works for me with Ayukta is the fact that this is my escape. I do this when I'm if after a frustrating day of work, this is what gives me happiness. Maybe if this is my full-time job, I might love it or I might not. But I am liking the way things are now, so I would never make. I mean, at least till now, you never know what I will 5 years down the line. But at least for
Up
now,
to
I
now.
don't think I'm going to ever make it my full-time job.
But what I realize is that, a lot of millennials, they want to do so many things with their lives and they want to make sure that they make time for everything. So it's not like you want to do one thing and you have to just do one thing. So it's pretty nice to see that you're able to contribute that much time, effort, and dedication to something that you enjoy as much as you're giving to the fact that you are professionally secured
Hmm.
and making an income. So let's assume there are people out there who have hesitated, getting into this whole bit and working with an NGO or volunteering. So there have been people who've hesitated because they feel it's going to eat into their personal space and their personal time, and they won't have time for themselves. And naturally, like you mentioned those myths quite correctly, that's something we all know. But what do you think people should do? What do you think your advice to millennials out there would be, just to make sure that, hey, you know what, if you really want to do this, there's a way to do it? Is there a particular structure you would like to recommend?
Yeah, I think like you very rightly mentioned, if they really want to do it, they will do it. And I use this line for so many times whenever someone says, I have an assignment due, I have this due. If you really want to do it, you can. You have 24 hours in a day. I wouldn't suggest that go less in sleep because that's not a healthy lifestyle to maintain, even though there are days when I do that myself, but I try to avoid it as much as possible.
Right.
Um, to the remaining, say, 16 hours of your day, if you take 8 hours of sleep out, is the time when I think about 8 to 9 hours we spend on our work. What we don't realize throughout the day is that we take a lot of buffers in between. There are
Yeah.
a lot of times when we do not know how the time has gone when we haven't done anything meaningful. That can be anything. That can be either you're scrolling on your on the gram or any other social media that you're addicted to,
Mm-hmm.
or you're just like taking a very long shower and you've forgotten that there's a schedule out there. Or sometimes it can also be that power nap that you think that I'll take a 15-minute nap and it ends up becoming a 2 hour, 3 hour nap. So the only thing is to have dedication. One thing that I try to achieve in my life, I think I'm still like miles away from it, is to wake up early. It's a very dad thing to say, but if you get up early in the morning, you feel like you have a long day with you.
That's true.
As our generation, no matter how hard we try, we will not sleep before 12 or 1. Like no matter, like there are
Yeah.
days when I'm like I have to sleep by 10 and I would not. And now my nature of work is also such that I cannot.
That's what I
um,
was about to say, that I'm going to give you benefit of doubt there, because your work requires you to stay up late nights, right?
Yeah, but by late early morning, I'm not saying wake up at like 5 or 6 in the morning. I mean, if you're able to do that, very good. My brother has a habit of waking up at 4 in the morning, and I see him. He'll start studying at 4 in the morning, and probably by the time I am up, he's done with everything. And
Wow.
that's like the most fresh thing. I cannot have that lifestyle, so I at least try to wake up by like 7, 8 maximum. Right now it's winter, so I give myself an additional hour. So yeah, I try to wake up by 8 a.m. and 8 to 2 is that 6 hours of my time that I can do. 2 o'clock my work starts and then the time goes past. But that 6 hours you can do a lot of things.
True.
You can study for your exams. You can prepare for anything. Prepare your coursework for Ayukta classes. I don't think it requires a coursework for you to prepare because, I mean, it's all still very fresh in my mind. Maybe because it's not been too long since I've graduated from school myself, so I feel like the concepts are still fresh. But yeah, the 6 hours, if you are not diverting yourself, try to take that 10-minute break in between. I'd always put my phone in Zen mode whenever I want to really work, which is a very good feature that I feel most of the phones should have. So when you put your Zen mode, then no matter how hard you try, you cannot open your phone. Uh, there are days when I really want to like open my phone in the middle because I've gotten bored of whatever task I've assigned myself, but no. So I think put your phone in Zen mode, especially I think that's true for our generation. We get distracted by our phones very quickly.
Mhm.
Maintain in when you wake up in the morning, put a list of things that you have to do it and do that in the end. I use tick marks because I feel like if I tick on something I've done, I feel really happy. That's why in between I put like two, three, like lunch as a to-do list. Even though that's not a to-do list, but I'll just put it because I know I'll eat it, and then when I tick, I feel like okay, I've done this work. So make your to-do list in the beginning of the day and try to finish it by tonight and see how much ever. Probably the first week would be you just identifying if you can do 5 things or you can do 8 things, or you can do 10 things. But once you have that number, then it feels really nice for you to plan your day. So wake up in the morning, plan your day. I think you'll have a lot of time left for yourself.
Well, I have to say that you're quite active and quite planned. So little sleep here and there is okay. You deserve to get that rest also. But I've realized this a lot of times. We're talking about your generation, but to be honest with you, it's not just your generation. My generation, the one before me even now, to be honest, sleep is something I love so much. When there's so many things to do. So frankly, phone technology or no technology, the
Yeah,
fact is that in every generation we do have similar problems, except that we deal with them differently or we look
yeah.
at them differently. So yes, sleep is common to both of us. Um,
So, Zarina, I have a question for you. I was just going through my Spotify and I've seen that empowering stories is something that you've been doing since 2017, and now we're in 21. So almost
yeah,
been about 3.5 to 4 years.
yes,
I've often observed that when like people have their podcasts, it's always limited to like say 6 months or 8 months duration, and then there's a break that they take because they want to get fresh content. How is that you have been able to create content on a weekly basis for like since for about 3.5 to 4 years? That would be like about 150 odd weeks, and or
yes.
maybe more episodes that would have gone up. So how is that you're able to create content continuously and have new idea every single week?
I've never answered this question because nobody's asked me this. But so when we started off, we did a pilot, and the pilot seemed to be nice. It sounded good. There was only 6 episodes, so we are in season two, but we're doing season two because the pilot went well, or we enjoyed it so much. Bringing out content, that's quite right, actually, Akanksha. I never gave this so much thought, but the fact that it has to be relevant, it has to be real, it has to be real in time, what is happening now. So, one thing I can tell you is that the pandemic gave me a lot of content, for sure.
Yeah.
So, this entire year, 2020, I can't complain. We hit our 100th episode in 2020. We landed up starting a new episode feature every week as well. So before
Oh,
that, I only had once a week episodes, and during the lockdown, we started twice a week. So there's a short format on Mondays, and then there is this what I'm doing with you, the empowering series. So what I realize about content is, one, you really need to feel what you're sharing with your audience. One is that. The second is, you can't get bored of what you're doing. If you're bored, then you definitely will sound bored. You will not bring the best out of whatever you want, or your guest, or the content. And three, look for relevance around you. There's so much empowerment around us that I think hopefully we will continue the empowering series long enough because we have so much to offer in terms of people, stories, inspiration, and whatnot. So, yes, thank you for the question. It's difficult. It's difficult. Some days it can be difficult to create your short formats or to bring the right guest. But at the end of the day, it's always fulfilling. So, yeah, it's been great so far.
yeah, that's funny stories. In the beginning of lockdown in March, I was telling all my friends that I'm going to start my own podcast.
You should.
Because I think we attended Spoken Fest in January, which had an anchor workshop for
Mhm.
Spotify. And after that, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to get my friends and get them to talk about their life. But yeah, I mean, I realize it's something that requires a lot of effort for you to create content. It's not as easy that it sounds. That people think that okay, you have to just come and speak for an hour, but the thinking behind it and what to stock and making the whole question format, I think it takes a lot of time. So I think I realized that But so this will be my full circle from what I started in the during March, that I wanted to like have my own podcast, to actually being a part of podcast. That do
Yeah.
I probably like have listened to some of their thing, and I'm not gonna say it because I'm not sure which of them classify into IVM and which is not IVM. But I think I've heard like a couple of IVM podcasts.
That's great. I'm so glad you have. IVM has been one of those flag bearers, I have to say, in
Yeah.
podcasting for sure. And I'm extremely happy and, really privileged to be part of that journey with IVM. Another thing that you mentioned is yes, it's not an easy job, Akanksha, but you have to have a great team. And to be honest, I have a fantastic team. My producer, sound engineers, all of them, and they do wonderful work behind the scenes, getting everything ready. So, yes, I think when you're ready, we'll have a conversation, especially about podcasting, and you can start your own.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm waiting. I just need content. I thought initially I'll get my friends to talk, and then I realized I have to have so many friends to have a 1 year show.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But this is
uh,
one thing I will give you a little tip there on podcasting. Try and bank episodes. Try and create awareness of your podcast. After that, your friends will want to come on your podcast. First, you have to invite them. After that, they will want to come. So that's how it works, right?
yeah.
Okay. So now we've come to the last segment of our conversation, Akanksha. Couple of questions yet to go. The first of those is, what is that one belief that you swear by?
What's that one belief that I swear by
Yeah.
is to find time for everything. And when I say everything, find time for your family, find time for your friends. It's very easy to say at the end of the day that I'm very tired, I will talk to you later.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes immense amount of effort, especially you see a lot of people writing about adult friendship, that adult friendships is something that probably takes a long time to establish or something. But what people don't talk about, it requires a lot of effort. You have to talk to your friends, you have to have that weekly checkpoint or bi-weekly checkpoint, whatever is comfortable with you, to maintain that, and to also have a sense of, because they're the ones who have known you since you were little, or they have known you for a very long time. So
Right.
it kind of helps you keep stay grounded. So no matter how busy my week or day is, I always ensure to like talk to a friend, either in between of my day or towards the end of the day. Definitely on the weekends, weekday it's something probably in between, a quick conversation or so. So that's something I swear by, is to always find time for your friends and family, no matter what, because they're the ones who'll be there at the end, when probably everything doesn't go as you thought about it.
That is so sweet. I mean, people talk about finding time or making time, but finding time for your friends and family, that is very, very sweet. That's very thoughtful. I think your core nature is very altruistic to some level, Akanksha. Well, anyway, that's behavior. The next question is, any words of wisdom for our listeners out there, and even for, let's say, people who want to indulge in an NGO and contribute to society?
Yeah, I think my only piece of advice is go do it. Like, don't wait for that one application to not work in your life. Don't wait for you to. I mean, it all started for me as a means of diverting my mind, but don't wait for anything. Do it. I wished I could have started Ayukta probably way before, so that I would have been able to touch the lives of as many kids as I can by now. So don't wait for something bad to happen, or something just off chart to happen for you to start something new, right? Like, we always wait for something like some bit off to happen. That can either be some guy breaking your heart, or that can also be like probably not getting results that you aimed for. So don't
Hmm.
wait for any of that to happen. If you really want to contribute, start from now, like start from today.
So don't wait for something not to work out to make this work out,
Yeah, that's
right?
yeah.
Okay. And finally, Akanksha, what empowers you?
What empowers me? I think the fact that I have parents and friends that have supported every single life. I know it sounds very much like the first answer, but the fact that I have them at the back of my, even though if I've had a day where they're probably everything that went wrong, but the fact that I have them to say that it's okay, just take a break right now, probably think about it tomorrow. I think that is one thing that empowers, is to know that I have something to fall back to. And if things probably don't work as I have planned, I still would be in a good place in life. So yeah, I think that empowers me in a lot of way.
That's very beautiful. That's also very positive. And what I liked most about this conversation is that, although you're so passionate and compassionate, you're also very pragmatic. You're always open to the idea that if something doesn't work out, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to be. So you're hopeful at the same time. You don't have your expectations so high that it demotivates you. And that is so beautiful to see. That is so nicely balanced out. Wow. You truly are an inspiration, Akanksha. You're doing wonderful work. Hopefully, more people join and volunteer. I too will try and make some time for this and get in touch with you post this recording sometime. But this is fantastic. God bless you. Keep working hard on your endeavors and keep doing the wonderful work with Ayukta that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Zarina. Thank you for doing this and for having me here. And I guess in a way, my podcast, I think I can make a little tick from my podcast dream, because I did in a way featured in probably a podcast that I have looked up to in a lot of ways. So thank you so much for having me here today and for having this wonderful 1 hour chat that I didn't even realize that the time.
I know time flew by.
Yeah, it just went by really fast, and it was a wonderful experience.
Thank you for being on the show, and keep inspiring and empowering people like you do, Akanksha. All the very best.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
If you liked this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Storytel and The Whole Truth Foods. Thank you for supporting us. So a great bunch of episodes this week. First, let me tell you about The Note with Maruk Inayat. It was featuring Asaduddin Owaisi. She spoke to the AIMIM leader to understand what the Indian Muslim voter wants and how his party is any different from the BJP. On Advertising is Dead, Varun spoke with Malika Sadani. Malika is the founder and CEO of the Moms Company. They discussed the science of motherhood. On Naan Curry with Sadaf and Archit, Dhananjay Chuck of the Edges and Sledges podcast showed up, so we did another crossover, this time with food and cricket. On Agla Station Adulthood, Ritasha and Ayushi talked to Gaurang Sangvi, head of digital business at DSP Mutual Fund. The episode has some logical and realistic advice, especially for millennials, on how to invest their money. Shunya One is back this week with Sheila Ditya and myself. We spoke to Anirudh Singla of Pepper Content this week. Really interesting conversation. Anirudh gave us some real deep insights into content creation and how they're thinking about different ways of creating it. Do check them out. Really fun show, really fun conversation. And with that, we hope to see you again next week.
Want to learn something new and have a few minutes to spare? Well, then go for the Traveling Professor's Diary, where I, Siddharth Deshmukh, the Traveling Professor, will help you glean from all the insights that I've gained from wherever I've traveled, learned, taught, and repeated. Join me every Tuesday and Thursday on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.